Good morning. I'm Les Jacobs, Vice President, Research and Innovation here at Ontario Tech. I'm delighted to be participating in this webinar. It's a joint initiative between the Brilliant Energy Institute at Ontario Tech University and the Canadian Nuclear Isotopes. Uh, the focus of the initiative is really on what are the international innovations around nuclear isotopes and the opportunities and initiatives that are occurring in Durham Region. And so what we will do is really bring together a nice forum for talking about collaboration between the international and local. So with those as my sort of opening comments, I'll pass it on to our moderator.
Thank you very much, Liz. Good morning, all. I'm very pleased on behalf of the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council to be co-hosting this webinar with the Brilliant Energy Institute and moderating today's discussion about how one Canadian region is really stepping up to support innovation in isotopes, which is supporting both Canada and the world. Some of you may have seen the news yesterday, but the Brilliant Energy Institute at Ontario Tech University is officially the newest member of the CNIC. We've got close to 130 members now across the Canadian nuclear and health sectors, academia and beyond. So we're very excited to have BEI working with us to strengthen the unified voice of Canada's isotope community, and having this webinar being the first of many collaborative efforts between the CNIC and BEI to strengthen that voice. So without further ado, let's move on to our topic for today for the webinar and talk about Durham. Durham is home to one of the world's leading nuclear isotope ecosystems, driven by the collaborative work going on between some of the folks that you'll hear from today, between academic organizations, prominent companies, and training institutions in the region. Today's conversation is going to dive into these regional collaborative efforts between Durham-based organizations to really explore how this region is helping to position Canada at the global forefront of isotope and health innovation, and supporting some of the prominent international nuclear education and capacity building initiatives that are going on by the IAEA. I should also mention, just before I get started in introducing our panelists, that this webinar is intended to be interactive with our audience. So at any time during the event, please do feel free to submit your questions to our panelists using the chat function below or the Q&A, and I will try to get to as many as I can this morning. So without any further ado, let's introduce our panelists for the conversation. Firstly, we've already heard from him very briefly this morning, but Professor Les Jacobs is currently the Vice President of Research and Innovation at Ontario Tech University, which he joined in 2019 after a long tenure as professor at York University. With his leadership, Ontario Tech University has been designated for the past 3 years as Canada's Research University of the Year among smaller universities, and now ranks among the top research universities in Canada. Dr. 𝗂𝘂𝗽𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂 is an associate professor in the Department of Energy and Nuclear Engineering at Ontario Tech University, a former president of the Canadian Nuclear Society, and a fellow of the Canadian Nuclear Society. His research interests cover nuclear reactor physics, microreactor design, radionuclide production, and medical applications of radionuclides and radiation. Lise Stevens is the director of the Program of Action for Cancer Therapy, or PACT division, at the International Atomic Energy Agency. Prior to joining the agency, Lise spent 24 years in various roles at the U.S. National Cancer Institute, including as deputy director of the Center for Global Health. She co-founded the International Cancer Control Partnerships in 2012 with the Union for International Cancer Control. Lisa Taylor is the Director of Isotope Strategy and Business Development at Laurentis Energy Partners and a co-chair of the Central and Eastern Ontario Isotope Alliance. Prior to joining Laurentis in 2024, Lisa spent 24 years in the pharmaceutical industry in a variety of business development and marketing roles, including at Bayer Canada, where she facilitated the setup of 50+ programs at nuclear medicine departments across Canada. And last but certainly not least, Ivan Chung is a business development specialist for Invest Durham. He has more than 20 years of experience in international trade, business development, and investment attraction. He now leads initiatives focused on Durham's future energy and life sciences sectors, including advancing the region's leadership in nuclear innovation, supporting the growth of Canada's isotope ecosystem, promoting clean energy investment opportunities, fostering industry partnerships, and attracting domestic and international companies to the Durham region. So I'd like to firstly say thank you to you all for joining us this morning. It really is a pleasure of mine to be moderating this discussion with such prominent leaders in the field. So our first question, and I really just want to get a bit of a lay of the land from you folks. And I'm going to start with you, Ivan, from this perspective and as Invest Durham. And then perhaps we'll go over to Les for comment on this. Really, in your opinion, how is the Durham Region's nuclear and isotope ecosystem helping to shape Canada's global leadership role in this field? Oh, Ivan, you're on mute there.
Okay. Hi, sorry. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be a part of this panel discussion. I think at this point in time, we have never seen much sort of this momentum and excitement in innovation within Durham Region and across Canada and across the world. So what is extremely important to highlight, I would say, is that, with the Canadian Nuclear Energy Strategy that was announced on June 22nd, this is actually an important national framework that Durham Region, as a host premier nuclear destination and host community, have allowed the growth of Canada being recognized for its future competitiveness. So it's not just about sort of the megawatts that we've produced and looking at energy where we look at Canada or even Ontario that we need to produce, double the amount of electricity. It is the matter of fact that in this region alone, we have the capacity to increase that life-saving medical isotopes and production that is within our infrastructure assets. So happy to look at how our infrastructure, our existing workforce, talent development, expertise, and the collaboration inclusion of our partners, whether it be our utilities, Indigenous partners and collaborations, and community. This is where a defining moment in Canadian history in terms of sharing that leadership role across Canada. So I'll start with that. Thank you.
And just to build on Ivan's comment, there are a number of very unique features of Durham Region. One is obviously the presence of both Darlington and Pickering and the increasing appreciation of CANDU technology as a catalyst for really innovation in the isotope sector. Of course, we have new or emerging leaders like Laurentis, who we'll hear from in more detail, being here. And of course, on the other side, we have Ontario Tech with its historically strong cluster of nuclear health, nuclear engineering, nuclear science capacities, both on the research side and, as Ivan highlighted, also on the talent development side. And Ontario Tech is distinctive in two related ways. One is that we work very closely with industry partners sort of across the spectrum, but I'd say that particularly in those nuclear fields, we are very work very, very closely with them. The second is that we are home to Canada's International Atomic Energy Agency Collaborating Center. And that collaborating center very much looks to what collaboration with international partners looks like in countries around the world. And that positioning is really quite distinctive. I'm director of the Collaborating Center, and there are just ongoing discussions in Vienna, but elsewhere, about what the opportunities are both for Canada and Durham Region in the nuclear isotope space. So those are sort of part of the foundation and the offerings that Durham Region provides.
Thank you, Les, and thank you, Ivan, for getting us started with that really strong starting point. Lisa, I'm going to come to you a little bit more. Les alluded to in his little remarks there that Durham Region is home to the CANDU reactors, a couple of CANDU reactors that we've got here in Ontario. And these reactors are contributing to safe and reliable production of not just energy, but also isotopes in a couple of different forms. So Lisa Taylor, I'm going to get mixed up between the two Lisas that we've got joining us today. But Lisa Taylor, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the CANDU reactor capabilities that both Pickering and Darlington nuclear generating stations possess, and really what makes the CANDU reactor ideal for isotope production compared to other reactor types. What role really does the Durham region play in isotope production by leveraging these reactor types?
Thanks, Melody. So, I think we as Canadians don't always brag as much as we should, but I'm going to start with Darlington and what we have there in terms of isotope production. Quite simply, Darlington is one of only several working power reactors in the world at present that are producing medical isotopes. And really, until recently, medical isotopes were exclusively produced at a network of research reactors around the world, which are dedicated to research and production of isotopes. And these research reactors, I want to acknowledge first, have been and will continue to be a vital part of the isotope supply chain. But what we're seeing now is an incredible surge in the global demand for medical isotopes, which is increasing exponentially over the next decade. And we really need innovation in the isotope supply chain to stay abreast of this demand. And what we have with CANDU reactors, and I'll use the isotope production system that we have at Darlington, is a means to deliver the reliability, consistency, and scale of isotope production that the world requires now and in the near future. So let's talk about the reliability as it relates to CANDU reactors. CANDU reactors refuel online, in contrast to research reactors, which have to go down on a regular cadence to refuel. So the reactors at Darlington, as an example, have about a 30 to 40 month runtime before there's an interval of planned outages. So from an isotope production perspective, we are able to offer that reliability of high operating days within a year and just a long cadence of reliable production of these isotopes. So that's one point as it relates to CANDU reactors. The next is consistency. So we need to be able to, for anything that's injected in the human body, whether it's a medical isotope or otherwise, it needs to be a consistent concentration. And when we speak of isotopes, radioactivity. So a feature with the CANDU reactors and what we have at Darlington is anywhere that you stick the starting material for isotopes in the reactor core, there is a consistent flux. So we are able to irradiate with a consistency that is really required for anything going in the human body. So in contrast, research reactors, they have a variable flux in their core. There are high flux zones and low flux zones. So there's sort of a variability of the irradiation times to deliver that same isotope radioactivity. And even following these periodic refuel cycles, there could be variability in the flux in one specific zone. So there could be a variability of up to 40%. So what we offer at Darlington in our CANDU reactor is that consistency. And the final thing I'll mention is scale. Again, going back to that surge in global demand, all of the research reactors in the world combined will not be able to meet that projected exponential growth. The power reactors such as Darlington coming online with our system, we are able to produce isotopes at a significant scale to deliver on the commercial needs that are required in the world.
Thank you, Lisa. That was a really comprehensive overview. And Eleodor, I'm going to come to you for kind of the second part of this question, especially based on your background in nuclear reactor physics and design. What would you comment on this question about CANDU capabilities for isotopes compared to other power reactor types?
Yeah, thank you, Melody. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the technical side of things. And we produce radioisotopes primarily by two methods, either activation or fission. And activation is when we take a relative of the isotope of interest, we irradiate it with neutrons, it becomes the radio isotope that we're actually interested in. Fission, on the other hand, has a bit of a similarity with alchemy. you hit a fissile nucleus like uranium-235 with neutrons, you get tens of different elements, of different nuclides, and some of these are the ones that are of interest for technical and medical applications. So then all you need to do afterwards is chemically separate them and use them. So Lisa mentioned the scale, right? The flux in a power reactor, as the 𝗏𝗂𝗴𝗏 is higher than the flux in most of the research reactors. So we can produce isotopes at scale. Also, compared to other power reactors, the 𝗏𝗏𝗃 is refueled, essentially on a daily basis, and also is not pressurized. So these medical isotopes, they tend to need to be harvested once a month or maybe even more often than that. And with a pressure vessel reactor, which is only opened once every 2 years for refueling, this is a difficult process, right? It doesn't lend itself to this cadence as Lisa was mentioning that is needed for isotope production. On the other hand, in a 𝗏𝗃𝗃 reactor, because the vessel is not pressurized, we can insert these targets, keep them for as long as needed, and harvest them again as needed. And now I'm going to go and compare the two sort of main mechanisms, activation versus fission. Activation tends to be a lower yield method than fission. Fission is a higher yield method. And I'm going to, remind people of our beloved NRU reactor, National Research Universal, that used to be the workhorse at Chalk River Labs, and it used to be able to provide about half of the world supply of molybdenum-99, which is for medical the workhorse of diagnostic of nuclear medicine diagnostic. About 80% of nuclear medicine diagnostic procedures use this molybdenum-99, which is now produced at Darlington through activation. So I was going to say that there are additional opportunities for expanding that capacity. If we were to go to a moly-99 production through fission, we have done studies here, and we were able to show that using this 16 fuel bundles in the Darlington reactor, that could produce the world supply of the entire world supply of moly-99. Just to give you an idea, the total number of bundles in Darlington is upwards of 5,000. So the impact on operations would be minimal, and we were able to come up with a bundle design that is essentially identical in behavior to the standard fuel that is currently used in Darlington. And let's not forget, we're mentioning OPG and our reactors here, the 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏 reactors, but we also have fuel manufacturers in Durham region. We have Cameco, and Cameco is we've been in touch with them, and it's able to actually help manufacture such fuel on condition that there is interest from the utilities. So I think we can, on one hand, be very proud of our achievements so far, but also look ahead to even expanding on the success that we've had so far, and bring isotope production to an even larger scale, and also look at different isotopes. As I was saying, fission produces several tens of of radioisotopes, many of which are of use, and also activation. So I think the possibilities are really vast for collaboration in the Durham region.
Thanks, 𝗂𝘂𝗍𝗏. You actually set me up very well for the next question that I'm going to be coming to Ivan with, and that's about looking to the future and considering future possibilities. So we've talked about the current capabilities in terms of technology in the region, in terms of the CANDU fleet. But when we look to the future, we know that the Durham region is experiencing significant nuclear investments, including the SMR programs, major refurbishments at the existing CANDU reactors, new energy generation at an 𝗂𝗂𝗴𝗶𝗺 site in Port Hope. So Ivan, can you comment on what is really driving this momentum from an investment perspective, and how does this position Durham for future international collaboration in nuclear and isotope innovation?
Thank you for that, actually. When I look at that question, and I was really thinking about, what does this ecosystem actually speak to? And I think when we look at Durham region specifically, this has been decades and decades of expertise that has driven these infrastructure investments to the region. And by no means is this, located within one particular area, but it speaks to the type of supply chain, the innovation and research done by the multitude of agencies and partners, as well as support from the federal, provincial, and of course our municipal government here in Durham region. And I want to be able to recognize this, that when you look at globally around the world, what makes Durham region really, really unique is that our municipality is actually a two-tier municipality. So we operate just below the provincial level, supporting our local municipalities when it comes to a regional plan and looking at these infrastructure investments, because what is required, most importantly, to drive these investments is the social license to work with our local communities, in recognizing that we don't have facilities just dropped in the city of Pickering or even the municipality of Clarington. They undergo strict, very confident regulatory licensing and governance that it needs to drive these opportunities. And what that establishes is a framework for confidence, not only confidence in our systems, but confidence in that communities that are leading them, as well as our regional leadership. And that really just drives to how important, when we look at economic competitiveness, leads to establishing trust. Because when we look at investment or look at the type of collaborators that have come to the region through the supply chain, through the construction and design and engineering services that companies have brought to these projects, by no means is it a CANDU technology, but it's the services and support and the talent and workforce that's been developed around them. So that is, a really important factor, is that it's not about where, the SMRs are being built. This is $60 billion worth of infrastructure investment in Ontario. These are the largest infrastructure investments commitments in Canada. And the recognition, again, I draw it back to, is the nuclear energy strategy is also is an emblematic policy when it comes to looking at what Canada can do in leading not only the clean energy transition, but of course the production of isotopes that are, of course, are going to continue to save lives under the guidance and research of the partners, collaborators, and of course the expertise of our utilities and power generators that are going to be setting that path forward. So when I talk about that, it's not just about, companies. It's, of course, it's about the people behind them. It's the modern infrastructure, our stable government, our trusted institutions, our strong research. And when we look at what is established at the regional level, is that our regional strategy reflects the importance of building capability and collaboration. This is not something that exists as solely to Durham region. I think we will be speaking later to our cooperation, of course, with the CNIC, building out the ecosystem, but also the Central Eastern Ontario Isotopes Alliance that is here in Durham, but extends further and across, expanding our areas that, by no means is this regional approach. This is a corridor approach that the infrastructure and laboratories at the CNL or even in Ottawa, this logistics, the supply chain, to allow our infrastructure to continue to grow. So, I see this as, it's not just a singular investment of, let's say, the Darlington or Pickering refurbishment, or even the Port Hope. It is a reflection of the amount of competitiveness that the region has to attract and develop highly skilled talent for these projects, and allowing that the region, given our proximity to market and, of course, regulatory stability with our policy, this allows the expertise to be exported. So in recognition of the strategy, that also increases Canada's global competitiveness, knowing that isotope production is a key measure and factor allowing the economic growth of not only the research that's being developed here, but allowing that innovation to be exported internationally. I'll hold it off there, but thank you for that question.
Thanks, Ivan. I very much agree with you. At the CNIC, we often use a puzzle analogy when we're talking about strengthening the isotope ecosystem, that you truly do need all the different pieces of the puzzle working together simultaneously to paint that full picture. So regulatory, supply chain, logistics, infrastructure, all of those things need to be in place to really see the future evolve. So Ivan, you talked a little bit about the international piece at the end there. So Lisa Stevens, I'm going to come to you for a few moments to broaden our conversation internationally and to provide some context as to the reason why all of this is important. Could you talk a little bit about the role that the IAEA plays in helping countries around the world produce or access isotopes? And from your perspective, tying to our discussion today, how can regional hubs around the world support and strengthen the work that you're doing with the IAEA?
Great, thanks Melody and to CNIC for inviting me to participate. So I am representing the International Atomic Energy Agency, which I hope many of you are familiar with. We are a specialized international organization that promotes the peaceful use of nuclear technology. And we also want to make sure that we're supporting our member states through partnerships like the one we have with CNIC and with countries like Canada, to expand the use of nuclear and radiological technologies for sustainable development. And this does include the ability to produce and import radioisotopes for medical use. We do have technical programs that support collaborative research projects. We also help deliver guidelines and other technical documents, as well as technical assistance. And there may even be some technical officers from IAEA on today's webinar who have been collaborating at the technical level with Canadian scientists. So the division that I run is the Program of Action for Cancer Therapy, as Melody said, and we coordinate international expert missions to look at the cancer care capacity in countries. We're invited in by ministries of health, and we do this in partnership with WHO and the International Agency for Research on Cancer. And I mention this because we are also increasingly seeing countries asking for support in their radioisotope infrastructure, because we know that these are indispensable to modern cancer care, enabling diagnosis, staging, planning for therapy, and in cases, targeted treatment. And we also see that access remains uneven, especially when countries have limited nuclear medicine or radiotherapy capacity, or in cases, the research reactors that are one of the main topics today. So at the IAEA, we can support this full value chain from the needs assessment, policy advice, the technical cooperation, the technical advice, safety and regulatory infrastructure, quality assurance, and human resource development and partnerships in that space. And it's not just looking at one aspect of this cancer care continuum. So not just looking at the radioisotope, either production or introduction into the medical space, but how is it embedded into the cancer health system? Do they have trained staff? Are they able to maintain equipment? Do they have the supply chains and the logistics that have been already mentioned, the clinical protocols and the patient referral pathways? And so again, through our partnership with CNIC that we've already seen, we know that Canada has expertise that can help us support our member states in terms of training and that capacity building, perhaps even planning, learning from what you all have done within Canada to expand these services. And I think specifically in the Durham region, working as a hub for training, demonstration and innovation, and helping our member states through partnerships to be able to expand access. Very quickly, I do want to mention our Rays of Hope initiative, which was launched by our Director General in 2022. And we link also very closely to the Isotopes for Hope that CNIC has launched as well. And through Rays of Hope, we're really seeing an opportunity to match demand with opportunities in countries where the technical capacity sits and can join with our technical offerings here at the IAEA. And so it's not really just about producing more isotopes, but ensure that patients, wherever they live, wherever they're diagnosed, wherever they're receiving treatment, can benefit from this safe, reliable, and affordable diagnosis and treatment. So I might say more about Rays of Hope, but I do think that there are opportunities that we're already capitalizing on and opportunities in the future for us.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm going to stay with you for another few moments here. So from your role with the PAC division, what are really the biggest challenges that you see in improving cancer care capacity? And I know you talked about the Rays of Hope initiative and some of the opportunities for Canada, but what are some of the other mechanisms for regions that want to do more in terms of helping to address some of these through international collaboration?
Sure. So as I mentioned, our Director General launched Rays of Hope in 2022 because even though the agency, since its inception, had been supporting countries to expand access to radiotherapy and diagnostic imaging, the Director General said, we need to work in a way where we can see progress more quickly. And that's really what Rays of Hope isn't doing, technically things different, but it's how we coordinate on the side of the Secretariat, how we do parallel processes as opposed to things in serial planning. And we're seeing, the cancer burden in low and middle income countries is growing. It's actually more burdensome in those countries than high income countries because they're often facing a double burden of infectious disease as well as non-communicable disease. And so some of the challenges that we see are late diagnosis and weak referral pathways. And we can support this through cancer control planning that we do again with WHO and IARC, helping countries look at screening strategies. We also do see infrastructure deficits in radiotherapy and nuclear medicine. So again, it's looking at not only the equipment, but also the availability of trained human resources to be able to deliver the care when the equipment is in place. IAEA also can support countries with bankable documents that they can use for large infrastructure. So not only looking at procurement and training, but maintenance and service of equipment, infrastructure needs to expand services. The workforce shortage, I think the capacity building that IAEA supports in the radiation medicine field is one of our core activities and one of the areas that countries come to us over and over. And again, this is where partnerships like the one with CNIC can really help to ensure that we have spaces for these individuals to be trained. And also the fragile isotope and radiopharmaceutical supply chain. Again, this is not my area of expertise, but it has been mentioned. And so I think this is something that in partnership, it's an area that we can look at. And then finally, unequal access to innovation. So as we move into the theranostics, new radiopharmaceuticals that the experts on the panel have already talked about, these are opportunities for the technical teams at IAEA to partner with researchers in Canada, and then also to bring in the member states that want to benefit from these advances in radiopharmaceuticals.
Thanks, Lisa. I think really the insight into the work going on internationally to improve access is so important for us to keep in mind as context during these kind of discussions, as it's really why all of this matters. So with that context in mind, Les, I'm going to come over to you for this next one. I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the Ontario Tech designation as an IAEA collaborating center that you mentioned a little bit earlier, very briefly. How does this designation and the work between the IAEA and Ontario Tech support things like knowledge exchange, training, research alignment, some of the priority areas that Lisa was talking about a bit earlier?
Yeah, so it is the first collaborating center in Canada with the agency, so it's really quite pioneering. We went through our 4-year renewal in last fall. The initial focus for the collaborating center was on SMRs and integrated energy systems. It was expanded to include cybersecurity and AI. But in the background, with the first two mandates, it was very much thinking about initially what are the opportunities, sort of unexplored opportunities, arguably or initially around things like SMRs and new sort of sources for nuclear energy innovation in Canada that were beginning to happen, and Ivan alluded to those a bit already. The relevance of all of this is that, as Lisa really highlighted, the agency really has a broader global vision, and Canada, as a nuclear energy leader, uh, really is fundamentally committed to sharing its knowledge, background, and capacities with other member states in the agency. And the Collaborating Center is now doing that in multiple ways as we build collaborations with collaborating centers around the world in numerous countries that likewise are trying to build out their nuclear isotope capacities. And that's one aspect. And those collaborations, some of them have a pretty strong research focus, but many of them are about talent development. And then the second piece that the Collaborating Center functions as a catalyst and hub is to actually host uh, individuals from many of these countries for particular programs, in effect, learning programs, education programs, management programs, those kinds of things. And that's happening in multiple ways. The third piece is really working with the agency on curriculum development. And that's another aspect as the agency increasingly moves to virtual uh, course developments, those kinds of things, and delivery. There, the Collaborating Center really is playing an important role, but it fits into, broadly speaking, this idea that not only do we learn an immense amount from the agency, but we also are very committed to sharing with the agency Canadian capacities. And even though the center is hosted at Ontario Tech, we see it as a Canadian institution that really is trying to bring and share Canadian capacities internationally.
Thanks, Liz. I appreciate the comment at the end there that it really is a two-way street in terms of the relationship between the university and the agency internationally, that there is so much that Canada can learn and draw from the international community, but we equally have a lot that we can share in terms of expertise in research and training development. So Ələodor, I also want to ask if you want to chime in on this in terms of how the designation, but more broadly, the collaborative work of the university is helping to strengthen Canada's presence in the global isotope community.
Right. So I'm probably going to expand a little bit on what Les was saying and look ahead into the future and on the talent development side, because that's going to be one of the fundamental needs now that the need for radioisotopes is expanding so fast. We are ready, and in a relatively short time, Ontario Tech will be launching a graduate diploma in radioisotope technologies for health applications. It's a collaboration between the Faculty of Engineering and the Faculty of Health Sciences. So that, of course, is not just something of interest to Canada, but is something that under the aegis of the IAEA could be made available to an international audience. We have had, and personally, I've had some excellent collaboration with IAEA developing such courses on their, I think it was called a knowledge transfer or something platform. A few years ago, that was mainly on the CANDU reactor, but we could try to replicate that in the area of radioisotopes. Again, also building on this graduate diploma that we are going to launch in fairly short order. On the research side, I was already mentioning that we have quite a bit of expertise here at Ontario Tech in a radioisotope production, and I think there's quite a bit of opportunity, again, under the or in collaboration with IAEA, to establish not only collaborations within Durham region, but also internationally for developing methods of producing all kinds of radioisotopes with medical as well as technical applications. And just going now back from international to Canada, and Les, I think, also mentioned the Babcock and Wilcox labs in Ottawa that have quite a bit of expertise in separating and processing radioisotopes for medical applications, as well as in providing the actual containers that are used in hospitals, and also some expertise in developing the supply chain. So again, I think this would be an excellent opportunity for collaboration, and IAEA would be through its center here would be well positioned to help with that and expand it internationally.
Ivan, I see you've got your virtual hand up.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to be able to make a touch point because, of course, with the International Atomic Energy Agency here on the call, I think what we obviously can see now is that, with that representation, we can see countries all across the world, whether it be in Europe, Asia, here in North America, are continuing to expand their nuclear programs. And that awareness of how we can continuously collaborate and produce these isotope and continue the additional research necessary, given where pharmaceutical isotopes can be obviously advocated for patients. What I really want to be able to show is that this is the type of collaboration that may not necessarily be existent in all geographies around the world. And so with this advocacy work of collaboration with the IAEA, working with our post-secondaries, working with our health providers, making sure that the supply chain, the industry, the expertise is all there, is very, very much, we should, I would say, recognize what that capability here as Canada, given that we have a leadership position. And because of this leadership position, it is a responsibility to understand that these isotope production facilities and capabilities that we will have to come online will continue to increase. There are agencies, although not on this call, within the Canadian government that want to see the opportunities of these innovations to be exported, and of course, delivering on those rays of hope that isotope production can continue to grow, allowing not only here to the Canadians benefit, but to those countries, obviously, who are not as advanced or have the same capability. We are probably going to look at our local ecosystem, whether it be here in Durham Region or across the supply chain, to allow that type of collaboration to exist, knowing that as we expand our capacity for both Pickering, Darlington, future Port Hope, Wesleyville, or even the potential of Canada project for a cyclotron or national or a research accelerator, allows for this more opportunities to grow. So just as a recognition, we have those capacities here. We have, of course, a very nimble environment where with Ontario Tech and maybe several institutions, but Ontario Tech leading that level of collaboration that can exist, and as obviously here in Durham Region. So that workforce and skilled talent expertise is going to be seen here as we are entering these next stages of investment into our infrastructure. So.
Thanks, Ivan. So continuing on the topic of collaboration, we have fairly limited time left, so I'm going to try to get through a couple more questions here very quickly. Talking about collaboration, Lisa Taylor, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the Central and Eastern Ontario Isotope Alliance, of which you are one of the co-chairs. CEOIA stretches beyond Durham, so a little bit out of the conversation for today, but it goes all the way out to Ottawa and Chalk River, to include other organizations like 𝗏𝘗𝗿𝗵𝗺 and CNL. Eleodor mentioned the NRU reactor and its historic legacy a little bit earlier. But Lisa, what is the CEOIA? What led to its creation? And how is the work of the Alliance working to connect leaders around a collaborative shared vision for strengthening the supply chain in the region?
Thanks, Melody. I should start by just acknowledging my role. I'm one of the two co-chairs of the working group of the CEOIA, and it was really conceived in 2024 with a recognition by municipal leaders, industry, and actually the Canadian Nuclear Isotopes Council of the need to bring together and create a forum for all of the contributors to the isotope supply chain, from end to end, from irradiation to the end users in a hospital setting. So the group is actually co-chaired by Mayor Foster of Clarington and Leslie McWilliams, the president and CEO of Laurentis Energy Partners. So those are the two co-chairs, and then we have a vibrant working group, of which I am one of the working group co-chairs, that comes together on a periodic basis to really think about how to connect and collaborate to leverage the region's strengths with infrastructure, with expertise, with our nuclear host communities, and the experts in R&D and those end users. Because really, altogether, we've already talked about the fragility of our isotope supply chain. We can't just turn on a tap if there's suddenly a surge in demand. There's a lot of investment in the infrastructure that happens with quite a long line of sight. So this group comes together to discuss sort of gaps in our supply chain, ways that we can educate in our community, and collaborate together. I think anyone that works in isotopes, we talk about how there's a real melting isotope connotation. Everything that we do, we have to make it, purify it, make it fit for human use, and ship it around the world for use for patients. So the inherent need for collaboration to make that all happen really means that we have to come together in an entire supply chain to work together and make sure that for the benefit of patients at the end, that we are doing what we need to be doing. So the CEOIA sort of brings us together, and some of our key focus areas are really knowledge sharing and research collaboration, economic development, and Ivan, I know you've talked about this at length, but creating opportunities in the region for economic growth, job creation, tech transfers, partnerships between public and private sectors. There's a lot of exciting work on the go. Regional ecosystem development, so really creating that organization for companies and institutions across the entire supply chain. Collaborating with our Indigenous communities is an important facet as well. And finally, community engagement, both again with those Indigenous nations and communities and stakeholders. And, there's so much happening in this region and in our backyard that I think your average citizen wouldn't be aware of. So that awareness campaign is a key element as well, so that we disseminate our information about the benefits of isotopes and really influence government policy and decision making, both regionally and at a higher level as well.
Thanks, Lisa. From a CNIC perspective, we're certainly proud to be working with CEOIA directly to strengthen what's going on in the region. And we work directly with other regional coalitions like the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition, which is based in Southwestern Ontario, as well as some others that are based across the country, really working on strengthening that regional capabilities, which pulls up nationally and really strengthens the work that's going on across the country. So continuing talking a little bit about the collaborative piece, Les, I'm going to come to you for this next one. As I mentioned very briefly in my earlier opening remarks, the CNIC and the BEI recently announced a new partnership. The BEI is joining the CNIC as an academic member. So Les, how can this collaboration help to build a Canadian workforce that can carry the momentum that we're seeing in Durham forward and create meaningful impact across the region and across the country?
Thanks, Melody. I First of all, I should sort of give a shout out to the director of the Brilliant Energy Institute, 𝗂𝗵𝗺𝗶𝗵𝗺, who I suspect is probably on this call, and also Christina Marilynelli and Amanda May, who are key sort of in building this relationship with the Canadian Nuclear Isotopes Council. And fundamentally, it really is about both sort of working collaboratively and bringing the strength of the two organizations together. BEI has considerable strength in research, as well as at Ontario Tech with our range of academic programs, as well as some of our professional development programs. Those are all sort of strengths, but we really see the relationship as being sort of a synthesis of strength. And we did a live event in the spring that I think, frankly, we were astonished at the high level of turnout, and arguably that we had people coming from across the province because there was so much interest in what are the career opportunities. And we really see that sort of building. Obviously, this webinar is another example of this collaboration. And so we really are moving forward on that. I would also mention, sort of going beyond Melody's sort of comment, to say that we see great synergies around research capabilities. If there is an appetite to expand cyclotron capabilities in Durham Region, we see the council as being an important partner on that. And again, I'd say this webinar reflects both the council's interest in regional development, but also I think both for Ontario Tech and Durham Region and Invest Durham, the idea that it really is about a village working on this, that the problems are so, on the one hand, complex and challenges, but more importantly, there's just so much coordination happening. And we see BEI and working with the council as sort of an exemplar of that kind of collaboration, and sort of a go-to partner for Ontario Tech in the nuclear isotope space. So that's a sort of a high-level take on where we see the partnership going.
Thanks, Liz. And speaking on behalf of the CNIC, we're really proud to have you guys joining, and very much looking forward to where the future will go. We've got just a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to provide our last question to our panelists, and we're going to go around the table, so everyone's going to have an opportunity to chime in on this. And it goes back to a point that was made earlier about the new nuclear energy strategy and the commitment to creating a radioisotope strategy in Canada that we just saw a couple of weeks ago from the federal government. I love ending out events on this. I think it's a timely question. It's future looking, so it's talking about where we need to go from here. But from everyone's perspective, as the government begins to explore what could and should be included in the radioisotope strategy that's in development now, what do each of you think is one important factor to consider that we need to build a strong Canadian future in radioisotopes. Perhaps it's something that is tying to the region. Perhaps it's an investment opportunity. Lisa, especially from your perspective, is there something from the global context and the global landscape that the government of Canada should keep in mind? Perhaps we'll start with 𝗂𝘂𝗿𝗄𝗧 on this, and then we'll go around the table.
So certainly the latest announcements with respect to development of nuclear technology and recognition of its importance are encouraging, and the federal leadership on this is very welcome, and I think some collaboration with the national lab with the Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, the other company that I mentioned, BWX, as it's now known these days, Babcock and Wilcox, and there's others, in Peterborough, in Ottawa, in the Durham region, right? The utilities, some level of coordination with a stated objective of regaining market share, if you want to call it that, in radioisotopes. I think that would be a very helpful initiative. Potentially one of these projects of national interest that are now being used to push forward the economy. I think this would be a worthwhile such project.
Thanks, 𝗂𝘂𝗿𝗄𝗧. We'll go to Lisa Taylor next.
Yeah, I think just starting off, the recognition from our highest level of government of the global strategic importance of isotopes is a really strong foundation that we can really build off of. And then from policy investment, hopefully it means there'll be development of streamlined regulatory pathways and dedicated allocation of investment money for new projects. So that the federal coffers hopefully will continue to remain open to us, because as we said, isotopes has a really investment intensive infrastructure. So to continue to innovate and be current and build for the future, that will require that significant investment at all levels of government. And then hopefully to enable the development and implementation of Canadian-owned intellectual property, so that we can continue to secure our global leadership and attract partnerships around the world and investments as well. So those are some of the things that I think about with this new strategy.
Thanks, Lisa. We'll go to Lisa Stevens next.
Sorry, I had to find my mute button on the phone. I want to pick up on some of the points that have been made. I think it was Ivan that talked about exporting expertise. And I think the expertise can be exported with nationals from other countries who are provided spots in the training. And I think it's then still the Canadian expertise exported through those trained individuals. Also, this graduate diploma that was mentioned as a cooperation between the engineering and health spaces would be great if, under the Canadian contribution to Rays of Hope, some of these training slots could be made available to support Rays of Hope countries that really want to be able to provide the radiopharmaceuticals. And then I think the last part would be contributing expertise on missions, whether they're quality assurance missions or some of the baseline assessments that I mentioned that PAC does, contributing to the coordinated research projects. I think these are all opportunities to contribute in that international space.
Thanks, Lisa. And with our last 20 seconds here, Ivan, I'll go to you, and then we'll give Les the final word.
Thank you very much. So what I probably would look at is this particular investments in Canada are capital investments, and by no means is nuclear energy simply about investing in energy or production. It's really about the future of Canada's future economy. So what I look at it is, it's really about how spending creates this long-term economic goodwill and social benefit that we're bringing in engineering, construction, expertise, advanced manufacturing, transportation. It all more or less comes together. And from our side at the region, I think what we look at is, the life that we obviously are benefiting here and our proximity allows the workforce to come here to be in the region. So I think when we look at from a government standpoint, of course, I could talk about an economic view. I would like to obviously talk about the quality of life. Durham Region happens to be one of the targeted area municipalities across the lakeshore that allows more affordability in housing development. So when it comes to our workforce at the region, we recognize that lower area municipalities across the lakeshore are trying to increase the building permits to allow housing to come. So that workforce will be delivered here. I would look at that as a final note to recognize that although we look at internationally, we also have to look at home and how we can grow what is expected to be an economy of the future, given the amount of investment that the governments, both federal, provincial, and of course the commitments of our communities and of course our institutions are going to build that workforce to support these industries. So I'll leave it with that one. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan. And Les, in 20 seconds, please.
Very, very quickly, from the point of view of the strategy, the really unique feature of it is it brings together two ministries, both nationally and provincially, in very unique ways, bringing together the Ministry of Energy, Department of Energy, and the health care ministries. It's such a unique space, and yet everyone recognizes that those two distinct ministries have to work together both federally and provincially to deliver on the strategy.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Liz. So thanks to all for joining us for this really fascinating discussion and so encouraging to see some of the collaborative work being done in the region. Before we go, I do want to take a quick moment to highlight a few events coming up. The first is a CNIC webinar on August 26th in collaboration with the University of Toronto for a discussion about building the next generation of isotope leaders, which is very much in the vein of some of the things we were talking about today. This event will explore some of the pipelines to pull students into the industry, like co-op opportunities and partnerships with the sector, focusing uniquely on arts and science students and the role that they will play in building a strong isotope future in Canada. Next up, the Hydrogen Business Council Annual Conference, which is hosted by BEI, will be held on October 13th to 15th at Ontario Tech. This year's conference theme is Hydrogen Ready for Impact, which emphasizes the progression of hydrogen technologies from initial research projects to a more large-scale integration of hydrogen technologies in Canada's energy sector. And finally, if you'd like to stay up to date with CNIC events, industry news, and opportunities to connect with us, please use the QR code up on your screen to sign up for our monthly newsletter. This really is the best way to make sure that you never miss out on a chance to engage with us. So with that, I'd like to thank our audience again for tuning in for this webinar, and importantly to our panelists for sharing your expertise and your thoughts with us for this really great conversation. And also importantly to BEI and the staff there for co-hosting this webinar with us. I look forward to seeing everyone for another event in the near future. Thanks again.